Hey Paul, welcome back to Propagandist. You know what time it is, based on the title of the video pretty much, but here we are, about to go into chapter 12 of RWBY Volume 3, the final chapter. We're about to wrap this volume up, ladies and gents, and yeah, we know what to expect. I mean, I've already kind of really outlined what this chapter's going to involve when I was obviously talking about the last episode and all that, but talking in the last episode, not about it, sorry. Obviously, you know, Cinder Pera, and then of course RWBY and exposition at the end, reveal of Salem. So yeah, this is going to be quite the conclusion to the volume overall, man. You know, Volume 3, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Volume 3 is probably one of RWBY's standout volumes overall, mainly just for the tonal shift that you know, that occurs halfway through, and just sort of that dawning realisation on the audience's part that this is not a light-hearted, sometimes comedic show anymore. It is now going into really serious, quite dark territory. So, you know, this was so standout back in the day when it was aired and when I watched it for the first time. And, you know, looking back on, you know, Volume 3, just thinking about when I first watched it, you know, coming out of it at the end of this volume, I always remember feeling like really sort of, how should I say, what's the word I'm looking for here? Really sort of, kind of like, hollow? No, that's not the right word at all. Just like, you know, emotionally so spent, because I was like, you know, holy moly, everything that happened there, our characters just went through an absolute meat grinder. And of course I could not wait for when Volume 4 eventually was released, because I was like, I have to know how this story is going to play out from this point onwards, now that, you know, Beacon is pretty much in ruins and the tonal shift has just gone through this massive change. So yeah, that's what I remember back in the day. Because, yeah, emotionally hollow, that's not the right word at all coming out of it. Just what I'm trying to sort of convey is this sense of my emotional state when I first watched this, coming out of, you know, the end of this volume, where sort of like, I was just like, holy moly, I don't know what else to feel now coming out of this, you know, because obviously it's like really shocking and tense, and, you know, you feel for the characters coming out of it. You know, Blake gets stabbed, Yang loses her arm, and then of course we know what's going to happen with Pera in this episode. So there's a lot to take in, basically, and it's just sort of like it bamboozles you all at once, and it's really good. You know, that's why Volume 3 is so standout. And I know, you know, I know that throughout this retrospective Let's Watch so far, I've been occasionally pointing out, you know, bits of animation ropiness or strange sort of things that if I was the animator I'd have done a bit differently. I like, you know, for example, in the last episode I had that minor criticism about characters with ranged weapons sometimes just standing around rather than being in cover, that kind of thing. I know sometimes I point these things out, and, you know, you may sort of look at those and you may think, you know, this is coming from a place of something quite critical. But no, this is coming from a place of passion and love for RWBY. I freaking love this franchise. You know, despite all the missteps and occasional criticisms one can legitimately make about this show from time to time, I still freaking love it. And I've talked before about how, you know, sometimes a show doesn't necessarily need to be perfect to gain my interest and to really sort of captivate me. Sometimes, you know, if it has soul and heart put into it, then I can forgive some errors here and there in animation or in writing or whatever, because I can still really enjoy it for what it is, and I can still find that the characters are really likeable and I can get really invested in them, so on and so forth. And that is very much the case with RWBY. And, you know, I've said before how, you know, certain criticisms that I've said, I need to stop saying, you know, because I keep repeating that very often, but I've said sometimes before about how there are some criticisms that have been made of RWBY that I personally don't agree with, or I think are really overstated for what they actually are. But I will accept that there are some criticisms that do have validity and legitimacy in light of, you know, how some, I just said, you know, again, in light of how some of the writing played out in subsequent volumes, that kind of thing. But I still think that in spite of those, the show is really good and it's gripping, and I still find that the characters, I really like them, I really get invested in them. And so it goes to show how having heart and soul in your story can sometimes really still keep an audience, even if you make the odd misstep here and there. And, you know, that's true of a lot of franchises out there. When you look at them and examine them, of course you'll find sometimes odd little choices in the writing or aspects of animation ropiness here and there, which, you know, the people making it could have maybe addressed that if they'd had the time, or, you know, they could have caught out on it during quality assurance or whatever. But, you know, it's a question of, are they major issues or are they actually quite minor? For me, a lot of the criticisms are quite minor. You know, granted, there's ones which are bigger ones, which I do think, you know, Team RWBY could have addressed, but still, they're quite rare, I find, in my opinion, and I still love this show for what it is. So I wasn't actually anticipating on going on a tangent on how much passion I have for RWBY at the start of this episode, but here we are. So, I mean, it's a good thing to mention again and reiterate as we get into Chapter 12 and all that. So yeah, that's just, you know, something me waffling on there about, you know, what this show kind of means to me on sort of an emotional level, to put it that way. I'm trying to think, you know, is there anything else that I would want to mention at this stage before we actually get into the video itself? I don't think there's necessarily anything else for me to point out in this intro. So, you know, I suppose we'll just get to the episode itself, and I'll probably... I mean, I mentioned a moment ago I'll talk about... Did I mention a moment ago, or did I mention at the end of the last chapter? Sorry, it's all blended together because I'm recording this all the same day as Chapter 10 and 11. But I either mentioned a moment ago or possibly at the outro of the Chapter 11 reaction. I will talk a bit about Volume 4 this episode, but I'll do that, I think, after I've reacted to Chapter 12. So, screw it, let's just get to it. Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Chapter 12, 3, 2, 1, go. We're off to the finale of this volume. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to, you know, getting into Volume 4, though. Since I've mentioned it, I might as well just say that right now. Because I'm thinking of all the RWBY volumes I've watched, which obviously is all of them. I don't know why I phrased it like that. But of all the RWBY volumes, in terms of the ones that I've rewatched quite frequently, the initial volumes definitely are ones that I think I've rewatched more frequently than some of the later ones. And Volume 4 probably is one of the volumes of RWBY that I haven't actually rewatched all that often. So yeah, it'll be interesting to get into that one and rewatch it again. But like I say, I'll talk a bit more about that in due course once we get to the outro section of this video, the post-reaction discussion and all that. Well, good. Is there anything else really for me to say whilst this opening sequence is playing out? Not really. Just waiting for, you know, the rest of the proverbial brown stuff to continue hitting the fan for this episode and all that. Right, let's get ready. Volume up. There we go. Cinder and Musopen. Yeah. Thought so. See, this is a short fight sequence, but it's actually really well made, from what I remember. I remember a lot of people back in the day asking, what is Musopen's semblance? Is it something to do with time? Yeah, so it's only a short fight sequence, that, but it's another iconic one.
That's it! Everybody on board! This is a mandatory evacuation!
A safe zone has been established in...
I've got to do a video at some point
remain
about
calm and listen to Atlas personnel.
favourite fight sequences in all of RWBY. Oh boy.
Ruby! Oh, I found you! Ruby, where are you? Don't worry, I'm fine. What's going on? Weiss? What is it?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yay.
Ooh.
Hey.
Just gut punch me in the feels, why don't you?
Okay. The soldiers have a ship ready to take you guys to Vale.
But John and Pyrrha are still missing. Ugh. What?
Look, guys. That giant Grim keeps circling the school. Even the White Fang are pulling out. We all have to go. Now.
We're not leaving.
Ugh.
I'll find them. I'll find them and I'll bring them back.
No. We will find them. Watch after Blake and Yang. We'll be back.
You better be! Idiots.
Oh boy. Still
Okay,
getting those
I think I
gut
have
punch
Glinda's
emotional
number.
feels. Even though I know what's going to happen.
Pyrrha? What was all of that?
I think they made some of the characters in these episodes emote very, very well. Combined with the fact you're so attached to them,
Ozpin.
it still gets me even now.
Go. Get to Vale and call for help.
Huh? What are you gonna do? No. No, Pyrrha, you can't. You saw how powerful she is. Pyrrha, I won't let you do...
How did I forget about that? Oh, don't do that to me.
I'm sorry.
Hey! Wait, stop! Stop!
She's got a strong shove.
Please don't do this!
She pushed him right across that pathway. See, Cinder doesn't even need elevators anymore, she just blasts right through them. I wouldn't want to stand in there, it feels like it would be pretty unstable, but...
It's John! Where are you?
Weiss! Please, you have to stop her!
What?
Pyrrha! She's going after that woman at the top of the tower! She doesn't stand a chance!
John, what are you talking about? Where are you?
Don't worry about me!
Please. You have to save Pyrrha.
We will. Are you okay?
Ah! Please.
John? John!
Yeah, the big boy's still flying around. You want to be careful of that one.
I have a plan. You always do.
That gives you a sense of scale, doesn't it?
This is your home now.
I like how the elevator dings just as Pyrrha flings a freaking spear out. She ain't too strong. We can clunk Cinder with a giant metal object, sure. It's not going to do you any good, though. Ooh. God.
We've gotta hurry!
You can do this.
Yeah. In the Achilles heel. A reference to who Pyrrha is ultimately based on. You know, I've never talked about that actually, have I? The mythological and folkloric
promised a power that was never truly yours.
characters that a lot of the characters in this show are
I
actually
take comfort in knowing
loosely based
I
on.
will use it in ways you could never have imagined.
Do you believe in destiny?
Yes.
Oh, Ruby, you're about to be traumatized. Yeah. And that's the end of the action sequence. Ooh, that ringing.
It's alright. I got you, kiddo. I got you.
Nothing.
Just turn it off. Without the CCT, there's no point.
Communication down across the entire kingdom. No way to contact the outside world. And Ozpin's still missing.
Yeah.
This is bad, Crow.
Yeah. This is bad.
Ruby! You're awake!
What happened?
I think this is the first time we've seen
Your
Tayang
Uncle Crow
speak,
found
isn't
you.
it?
Unconscious. He got you out of there, though. He brought you home safe.
Wait, Yang! Is she alright?
She's gonna be alright. I think it's just gonna take some time for her to get used to things. She's too strong to let this stop her.
Mm.
I'm just glad to have my girls back at home.
What happened to the school? And Vale? Were they able to clear out the Grim?
Things at Vale are under control, but the school, it's not that simple. That thing, whatever
with
it
the
is,
yellow pillows.
doesn't seem to be dead. Don't get me wrong, you did a number on it, but it's not disappearing. It's kind of frozen. I know that doesn't sound too bad, but it keeps attracting more Grim to the school.
I did what?
Hmm?
You said I did a number on it. What do you mean?
Look, that's not important right now. We can talk about it later. Things are just kind of a mess.
Mind if we have a minute?
What, I can't stay here?
Ty, please.
I'm glad you're all right. I'll go make us some tea.
So, how you feeling?
I kind of hurt all over.
That makes sense, after what you did.
You guys keep saying that I did something. What are you talking about?
What's the last thing you remember?
I ran up the side of the tower, and when I got to the top, Pyrrha,
Yeah.
is she?
She's gone.
I got to the top, and I saw Pyrrha and Cinder, and then everything went white.
Anything else?
I remember my head hurting.
The night you met Ozpin, what was the first thing he said to you?
I don't know. I think it was something about
Silver eyes. That's an extremely rare trait.
So?
You're special, Ruby. And not in the daddy loves his special angel kind of way. You're special the same way your mom was. Remnant's full of legends and stories. Some of them true, some made up. But there's one Oz told me from a very long time ago. Back before Huntsman, before kingdoms. It was said that those born with silver eyes were destined to lead the life of a warrior. You see, the creatures of Grimm, the most fearsome monsters mankind had ever encountered, were afraid of those silver-eyed warriors. They were the best of the best. It was said that even a single look from one of these fighters could strike a Grimm down. It's a ridiculous story.
But
we know it's true.
I might be...
Well, a giant monster's currently frozen on top of Beacon Tower, and you're here, safe in bed.
Wait, how did you know what Ozpin said to me? The night we met.
All those missions I go on, all the times I'm away in some far-off place, it's been for Ozpin. But he's missing now. Something's been set in motion, and with Oz gone, I'll have to pick up where he left off.
Then what can I do? If I'm so special, then I can help, right?
You really want to help? Get some rest. You're in no condition to go anywhere right now. Besides, our enemy's trail leads all the way to Haven. That'd be quite a trip for a pipsqueak like you. Catch you later, kiddo.
You think she isn't going to make it? Oh no, he knows. Yeah, when you see the characters emoting like Ruby does in there, still feel the emotional impact of it. Oh no, there's going to be more of it now.
Ruby.
I'm so glad you're okay.
But I'm not.
Oh boy.
It's all gone. The school.
Yep, definitely still feeling those feels.
Pyrrha. And...
Doesn't matter that it's not the first time I've watched
Where
it.
are Weiss and Blake?
Weiss's father came for her.
What? What do you mean?
No one outside of Vale knows what happened here. Before the tower fell, the last thing people saw was Atlas attacking innocent people and Grimm destroying the city. Everyone's scared. No one knows who to trust. So Weiss's father came to take her back to Alice, where he thinks it's safe. She's gone.
What about...
And Blake ran. Sun saw her go. After we got to the city, she just ran.
But why?
I don't know. And I don't care.
There has to be a reason she...
No, there doesn't. Sometimes bad things just happen, Ruby.
So what do we do now?
You could do whatever you want. I'm gonna lie here.
Yang.
Just leave me alone.
I love you.
Okay. Feels.
Hey.
Hey, John. Haven's a long way to go.
I know. But it's the only lead we have.
And you're sure you want to come along?
The journey will be perilous. And whether we'll find answers at the end is entirely uncertain.
But we wouldn't be here if we weren't up for it.
Then let's get started.
A smaller, more honest soul. It's true that a simple spark can ignite hope, breathe fire into the hearts of the weary. The ability to derive strength from hope is undoubtedly mankind's greatest attribute. Which is why I will focus all of my power to snuff it out. How does it feel?
Yeah, who might that
Knowing
be?
that all of your time and effort has been for nothing. That your guardians have failed you. That everything you've built will be torn down before your very eyes.
It's a great monologue, this one.
Your faith in mankind was not misplaced. When banded together, unified by a common enemy, they are a noticeable threat. But divide them, place doubt into their minds, and any semblance of power they once had will wash away. Of course, they won't realize it at first. Like you, they'll cling to their fleeting hope, their aspirations. But this was merely the first move. So you send your guardians, your huntsmen and huntresses, and when they fail and you turn to your smaller soul, know that you send her to the same pitiful demise.
Our first glimpse of Salem.
This is the beginning of the end, Ozpin. And I can't wait to watch you burn.
Your introduction to the ultimate big baddie. Well, this is probably going to be seen at the end of this credit sequence, in which case let me just... I won't entirely turn the volume down there. Whew! Yeah. God, I've said before, didn't I? Not just this episode, but I think I said in the last episode as well, how, you know, despite the limitations of Poser and all that, the creators of this over on Rooster Teeth's side certainly did manage to get some real kind of emotion out of the character expressions, and this episode in particular really illustrates that. It's just, I think, the bit where, like, you know, the camera really focuses on Ruby and Yang in that episode, focuses on their faces and just the way their faces really register certain emotions. Really kind of just gut punches me. Because yeah, even though, as I've said repeatedly, rewatching this again, obviously the first time I saw it, that was pretty emotional. And it's still emotional now. Watching it again still makes me feel very sad. Which again is just testament to the fact that for all its missteps, RWBY does do a good job, I would say, of keeping you invested in its characters and all that. So, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the intro about how I still have such a passion for this series, even if, you know, there are some missteps and criticisms one can make of things, choices that the production team made at various points down the line. It's still a good show, and I'm still very invested in these characters, and I want to know where their story ultimately goes. So yeah, it's a good way to end the volume though, that episode, with the sort of gut punch of Pyrrha's death, the reveal about the silver eyes, and then, you know, RWBY, Jean, Ren, Nora setting off to continue the adventure, and then finally the reveal of Salem. That is, you know, perfect series of events. And like I say, Salem's monologue at the end is really good, because this is the first time, well, it's not the first time we've heard her, because technically she narrates at the start of Volume 1, but it's the first time we've actually seen her in the flesh. And so, you know, I suppose when Rooster Teeth was producing this volume, they really needed that scene with Salem to be standout. They needed it to be like, you know, they needed it to sort of convey to the audience, oh god, this is it. This is the person who is ultimately behind everything. This is the big bad guy. This is who our heroes are ultimately going to be dealing with. And so I think that scene, that reveal of Salem, is really good, mainly for the monologue, because you realise this is the person who's behind everything. And, you know, if they were able to take down Beacon in that way, this person is a massive threat. And obviously we'll get more of Salem in Volume 4. But, you know, I think as an introduction to her, and really sort of giving you a reason to be worried about Salem, to fear her, I think this episode does a decent job of it, you know? Now, granted, obviously what we see in subsequent volumes then builds on that and gives you even more reason to be afraid of her. Because again, you know, mainly it's been Cinder and other villains who've been sort of having the limelight over these 3 volumes. Salem has always just been in the background. But, you know, that scene there really now brings her into the foreground. And it's just a good monologue overall. You get a real, you know, the VA of Salem, I forget her name. The VA of Salem does a real good job, I think, of conveying that menace, I would say. So, good stuff. How much more actually of the credits have we got? Oh, not much more. It'll be done in a second and we'll have the final scene. Though I think I remember the final scene of this one isn't really much. It's just, I think it's Crow, if I remember correctly. No dialogue, just Crow. We'll see in a second. But yeah, Volume 3. There you have it. We've done it. So we are 3/4-ish of the way through, I would say, roughly, this retrospective / non-blind Let's Watch. Yeah, actually quite glad that we got time to record this one today. It just means I have plenty of content pre-recorded that I can then put together in my editor, and that's ready to then go on the channel in case, for example, I ever have a weekend where I can't record for whatever reason, because I'm busy or whatever. Monty O, 1981 2015. Sad. Well, man. Okay, final scene, yeah. Oh, turn the volume back up. Shit, come here. Yeah, so it's Crow following the team, and he's got Ozpin's staff. And he turns into a bird. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Chapter 12, done. Alright, let's get our, let's take a jump cut here, and let's have our post-reaction discussion and outro in a moment. So, stick with me a second. There you have it. Wow. Yeah. What can I, where should I start talking about that? So I think, you know, Chapter 12 of Volume 3 overall is just a great way to end this particular volume. It really just solidifies, you know, the tonal shift at this point. So it's like, you know, Pyrrha's now dead, and we've sort of now got the reveal of the big bad guy in this franchise. So it's a great way to sort of end what is basically, you could say, kind of the first story arc of RWBY, which is, you know, the Beacon arc, to put it that way, setting up all the characters and setting up just, you know, the overarching threat and all that. So then, you know, obviously with Volume 4, we're about to get into the Mistral arc and everything that unfolds in that one. So, yeah, I mean, there's not really much else for me to say in relation to the chapter itself that I haven't already said. You know, it's still as emotional as ever, or at least it still has that emotional impact that it did when I first watched it. And again, you know, I reiterate my passion for RWBY and just the fact that I still love this show very, very much, and I want to see more of it and all that. So that being said, you know, what I really wanted to talk about in this post-reaction discussion actually is thinking more about Volume 4 and just some, you know, preemptive thoughts before we get into that volume. So, you know, from here on out, as we get into Volume 4, the story of that is very much about, particularly RWBY and Jean and Ren and Nora, their sort of journey to Haven Academy in Mistral. And it's about, obviously, you know, the other characters of RWBY as well and their little struggles as they sort of have to kind of come to terms with what's happened and then figure out their path forward. So obviously Weiss now is back in Atlas. Blake, of course, is going to go into Menagerie. Yang, of course, is having to deal with the trauma of what happened to her, the fact that she's lost her arm and all that. So, you know, it's also setting up kind of the kind of character arcs that are going to be had in Volume 4 as well. It's kind of setting down the foundation for those. So, you know, obviously the character arcs that we're going to see in Volume 4, not to be too spoilery, but, you know, obviously Yang is going to have to figure out a bit about herself and how, you know, what she is now that she technically no longer has an arm, and how she needs to fight and things like that, how she moves forward. Weiss obviously is going to basically go through a character arc that's going to see her kind of really breaking away from the influence of her family, and whilst Blake, of course, has her whole character arc with Sun and the White Fang, and sort of realising that, you know, she can't just keep running away, she has to, you know, stick with it and try and do something. So, you know, those are the character arcs really for the main four that, well, for three of the main four I should say, that you're going to have in Volume 4. And, you know, I'll say a bit actually about how I remember, obviously, so as I think I've said before, haven't I, in this series, how when I first started watching RWBY back in the day, years and years ago, obviously I didn't start watching it from the beginning when it was first airing with Volume 1. I remember, of course, that my first sort of how should I say, I first learned about RWBY actually through Gary's Mod, of all places, when I was looking through the Gmod workshop for, you know, ragdoll and player models, and I came across the RWBY characters and I was like, I've never seen this anime before, what's this? So then I searched it up, and then I discovered that there were about 3 series of RWBY on Crunchyroll or wherever it was, and so I started watching it and thought, this is actually really enjoyable. And then of course I got to Volume 3, and there was, you know, that was the real big moment that really more than ever gripped me and made me think, I've got to keep watching this show, I need to know how it plays out. And so, you know, then I was waiting, of course, for Volume 4 to come out, and I watched Volume 4 as it was airing back in the day, along with everyone else. And I always remember Volume 4 having, you know, my thoughts on it at the time when I first watched it were sort of, kind of, how should I say, complex to put it that way, because you know, it was funny because obviously Volume 3 is so intense, and then of course you have Volume 4 where sort of the direction of the show is going off in a different path to what came before it. And obviously, you know, because the ending of Volume 3 was so very intense, you know, the first when I watched Volume 4, I was kind of expecting that it would be very similar to Volume 3, i.e. very intense. But then what you actually find is that Volume 4 has a very different pace, to put it that way, to everything that's come before it. And I remember at the time I watched it, you know, I enjoyed Volume 4, but I always thought, I don't like this volume as much as what's come before it. But Volume 4, I have rewatched it, I think once, at least once before, and I do feel like it'll be interesting to rewatch it again now and think, you know, is my opinion of it now different in light of this retrospective Let's Watch and all that. Because that's the thing. I think Volume 4 was always going to have a challenging time coming straight after Volume 3, with, you know, the fact that Volume 3 was so intense and was so, you know, had so many iconic moments, particularly towards the end of it. So, like I say, Volume 4 always had some very big shoes to fill. And always remember, I enjoyed Volume 4 overall when I first watched it, but I definitely felt like the pacing was very different, which is understandable, because in certain respects Volume 4 needs to be more of a, not chill volume, that's not the right word. It needs to be, I think, a slightly more slower paced volume, just to give the characters a moment to sort of unwind after everything that happens and kind of digest what's going on. Because, you know, that's very much actually what Volume 9, I think, was to Volume 8, for example. Sort of like a sort of less frantic volume, where your characters just have a moment to try and process everything that's gone on and try and work out where they're at, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, Volume 4, I think, was always going to have a challenging time. But yeah, I mean, I'll talk maybe a bit more about this once we actually start reacting to that volume. But yeah, so like I say, I'm interested to see Volume 4, because it'll be interesting to rewatch it again and see if, you know, my impressions of it are possibly more positive than they were when I first watched it back in the day. But yeah, obviously the striking thing that's going to change in Volume 4 is the fact that, you know, this was the stage where Rooster Teeth was switching over from using Poser for the animation to Maya, and so that results in, well, visually speaking, a big aesthetic difference, where the show looks a lot different, it looks a lot prettier, a lot cleaner, a lot sharper. And of course, you know, the only obviously challenge that Rooster Teeth then faced back with that in the day was learning how to animate smoothly in that program after they were so used to Poser for the last few years. And so, you know, from what I remember, there probably will be aspects of the animation in Volume 4 that I might sort of pick up on and say, okay, you can probably see where Rooster Teeth were very, very much still learning the ropes of the new animation software and all that. But, you know, we'll get to that once we get into Volume 4 and all that. So, yeah, the other obviously big thing that's really come out of the last couple of chapters is, of course, Adam Taurus, and the fact that, you know, he refers to Blake with terms like my darling and my love, which, you know, is something that's always kind of, I think, split the fandom a bit, because Adam Taurus is such a kind of curious character in terms of, you know, what his motivations are, and you know, different people have different interpretations of that. So on the one hand, you know, when we first see Adam in things like the Black Trailer, and then from time to time earlier in Volume 3, you know, we sort of get the impression that his motivations are very much about revolution, about, you know, furthering the Faunus cause, if that, you know, through violence, since, you know, he believes that peaceful means are not going to achieve Faunus equality and all that. Then, of course, you know, you get this couple of episodes here at the end of Volume 3 where suddenly it's like he's almost like being made out to be sort of like an abusive boyfriend type of character. And I know not everyone liked that back in the day, because, you know, it very much sets up Adam as this kind of, well, douchebag sort of character, to put it that way. Whereas, you know, I think a lot of people wanted him to very much stay as kind of the revolutionary who's gone down a very dark path, that kind of character arc. But to be honest, you know, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I just realised the lighting on my camera is now causing the FPS to decrease a bit. Wonder if it's worth me opening my window and maybe turning off my main light and all that. If I just open it up slightly. How's that? That's a bit better, actually, yeah. There we go. That's just improved lighting. I think it's because it's now past midday, the sun has actually moved over a bit in the sky, so it's not shining quite as strongly on my window and all that. Yeah, alright, I just sorted that out. But yeah, I mean, Adam Taurus is so complex, because there's definitely been lots of wild interpretation, not wild, sorry, why did I say wild? There's literally been a lot of interpretations of his character throughout the years from different sections of the fandom. So like some people who see him as very much meant to be kind of that abusive partner type of character who, you know, is narcissistic and cannot accept the fact that Blake has effectively cut ties with him. And so he really just wants revenge on her, versus those who still think he has that sort of revolutionary who's gone down a dark path character arc. But there are some interpretations that when he uses terms like my love and darling and things like that, you know, he may just be taunting. He might not actually be literally suggesting that he and Blake were once in a relationship, but he's just more of like a narcissist and a revolutionary who's gone down a dark path, and that mix of character traits therefore produces this very sort of, you know, sinister, quite slimy character, to put it that way. But you know, it's certainly interesting when you then get to Volume 6 and Adam obviously takes his mask off and you see the SDC branding across one of his eyes, and you know, that's just one of those little character moments that does suggest a lot without outright saying anything, I do think. But yeah, I mean, that's just a bit about Adam Taurus that I think is quite interesting. And so, you know, Adam is a character who I have such sort of mixed feelings towards, you know, because on one level, it's not that I'm against the whole idea of having him as, you know, the reveal of him being an abusive partner, as well as, you know, being a revolutionary who's gone down a dark path and all that. But, you know, he's a character who is very much, I think, set up for you to dislike and hate, because, you know, ultimately he is a villain and all that, and etc, etc. And so, you know, maybe it would have been good to see perhaps a bit more delving into his character, into the sort of, you know, his progression as someone who went from this sort of revolutionary with noble ideas who then ultimately strayed down a dark path. And you do kind of see that actually with the I remember actually seeing a bit of that with the what was it, the Adam Taurus character short that I think was released in advance of Volume 6 from what I remember. But even then, that's just a character short. That's not, you know, like an episode or whatever in one of the volumes that really has the time to flesh out and elaborate his character. So, you know, maybe it would have been good to see a bit more of that. But, you know, I'm not going to hold that as a, you know, a big criticism against the producers of RWBY, because, you know, that's one of those things where, you know, it's easy for us as the audience to say, oh, we think you should have included this, and you should have included that, and you should have put this in here and that in there. But it's easy for us to say that, but when you're producing an animation and you only have so much time, so many episodes of so much length, you know, you can't necessarily squeeze everything in there. You have to remember that ultimately there's a story you're wanting to tell, and so as a result, that's the priority. So, yeah, I mean, it would have been good to see a bit more development of Adam over the franchise than what we got. But having said that, I don't think it's a biggie that we didn't. So, yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts on Adam Taurus as a character in brief. So, yeah, there was that there, ladies and gentlemen. And as well as that, obviously it's interesting in this episode that they say Ozpin has gone missing, he's not been killed and all that. So, you know, Rooster Teeth, the writers outright confirming to us that, you know, Ozpin's story is not done either here. We are still going to be seeing something of him over the following volumes and all that. So, of course, you know, Volume 4 is obviously going to introduce Oscar, which, you know, I have thoughts on him from my memories back in the day of people speculating about who Oscar was, but I won't talk about that here. We'll talk about that once we get into the reaction of Volume 4 itself. Yeah, but what else? Is there anything else I can talk about coming out of that episode? Not really much. You know, I think I've covered all really the main points there. Obviously, the Grim, the big Grim dragon, is frozen on Beacon Tower, not necessarily killed. And we know that that's how RWBY's sort of silver eye power can sometimes work. You know, for lesser Grim, it can basically just vaporise them, but for larger Grim, it doesn't necessarily kill them, because we know that, you know, sometimes it just sort of like freezes them. Because, of course, that's what happens in Volume 6, technically, isn't it? Because obviously when you have the big sea monster Grim towards the end of Volume 6 that tries to attack Argus, RWBY uses her silver eye power, but it doesn't actually kill it. It just sort of like freezes it, encases it in kind of like a stone substance, but then it starts breaking out, because of course, you know, she's still very much a novice when it comes to her silver eye power, and therefore maybe is not quite as powerful as she potentially can be. But yeah, I assume that's basically what's happened with the Grim Dragon. So it's always interesting, because obviously what that basically implies is that, you know, the story with Beacon is not technically finished here, and that at some point later down the line, the writers of RWBY are going to come back to it, possibly in like Volume 10, 11 or 12 or whatever. Because of course, one thing we do pick up on in Volume 4, and you know, it's a bit spoilery, but I may as well mention it here since it relates to what I'm talking about, is the fact that there's a scene in Volume 4 with Salem and Cinder where Salem mentions the relic hidden under Beacon. And that is the thing, we've never had confirmation of who has that relic. I think it's the relic of choice, isn't it, that's hidden under Beacon. And isn't there something about, I don't know where this comes from, maybe sort of like fan theories, or there's maybe some supplementary material somewhere, but is it not the case that something about the Relic of Choice. There's something about it that's so powerful that Osmond has put it under extra layers of security or protection, something like that. And so, of course, Volume 4 implies that Salem, despite technically overrunning Vale and Beacon, has not actually managed to find that particular relic. So that definitely to me implies that something is going to happen with Beacon and Vale later in RWBY, assuming that is that obviously Volume 10, 11, 12 ever, come to fruition, which I still really hope that they do. But no, I just think it's an interesting point there, because of course, the fact that the Grim Dragon is also frozen, not dead, really is one of those hints that somewhere in the plan for the overarching story of RWBY, it could very well be the case that, in the later stages, our characters are going to possibly go back to Beacon towards the very end, to the ruins of it, and have maybe some kind of final showdown there, something like that. At least that's what I suspect maybe is was the intention. Whether it'll ever come to fruition, we don't know. It depends on whether, Volume 10 and onward ever get greenlit, but, fingers crossed they do, because I really want to see more of RWBY. I don't want RWBY to sort of die at Volume 9, but who knows. Okay, I think, looking at time, that's probably a good place to wrap this episode up, because it is lunchtime now and I need to go and get food. I'm getting hungry and all that, and I need to actually start editing the footage of Chapter 10 to make sure it can go out this afternoon on the channel and all that. I say this afternoon as of when I record. Obviously, as of when you see this episode, you'll have already seen Chapter 10 and all that, you know what I mean. Alright, so yeah, thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for, enjoying Volume 3 with me. Thank you for obviously all your comments and things that you've been leaving throughout this reaction. It's been very interesting to read them. And of course, stick around for Volume 4 and other RWBY related material that we do as part of this this Let's Watch. So yeah, I'll need to actually look through the supplementary material on my Volume 3 DVD, because there might be stuff that we do a reaction to before we get into Volume 4. And obviously Volume 4 might have some trailers and shorts that we watch just before we get into into the main volume itself. So yeah, this next couple of episodes might not be Volume 4 Chapter 1 just yet. It might be a bit of material before we get to that. So yeah, there's stuff basically to look forward to in essence, so hope you'll join me for that. As usual, Propagandist is my second channel. My main channel is General Strategist, where I do various gaming related, gaming let's plays, that kind of thing. So there might be something over there that you're interested in. I still need to get around to playing the RWBY video games over on there, but I'll get to them eventually, don't you worry. Other than that, thank you once again. Join me next time where we'll continue on. Goodbye everybody.